And now moving on to the other story that we're tracking at this hour is where here in India, government services have always had a special place. Parents love asking their children to become an IPS officer or an IAS officer. It's all about social status and respect that comes with occupying such important roles, which is why the news coming from Karnataka is worrying. There is a full-blown verbal spat between the IPS officer Roopa and IAS officer Rohini Sinduri. They are sharing private pictures on social media, making wild allegations and even accusing each other of being mentally unstable. But remember, we are talking about two top civil servants here. Two people who are supposed to work in tandem and push the Karnataka government further. Instead, they are quarrelling like teenagers. Roopa Mudgil has shared multiple pictures of Sinduri on a social media page. Her caption left very little to imagination. Let me quote what she wrote. She wrote, "What does it mean when a female IAS officer sends such pictures to not one, not two, but three male IAS officer," unquote. She says, nobody should feel any sympathy for Rohini Sinduri. Let's take a listen.
ಮಾದರಿಯಾಗಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂಥವ್ರು ಇಂಥ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ಗಳನ್ನು ಪುರುಷ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಏನರ್ಥ? ಯಾಕೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ತಾರೆ? ಯಾಕೆ ಕಳಿಸ್ಬೇಕು? ಅದು ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟರ್ ಆಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಆ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಈಗ ಯಾಕೆ ಹಾಕಿದ್ರಿಂದ ನನಗೆ ಈಗ ಯಾಕೆ ಎತ್ತಿದ್ರಿಂದ ಆ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ನನಗೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿರೋದೇ ಈಗ, ಆಯಿತಾ? ನಾನು ಮುಂಚೆ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದ್ರೆ ಮುಂಚೆನೇ ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೆ. ಕಳೆದ ಒಂದು ತಿಂಗಳಿಂದ ನನಗೆ ಆ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಸಿಕ್ಕಿದೆ. ನಾನು ಅದನ್ನು ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಮಟ್ಟದಲ್ಲಿ ಕೂಡ ಎಲ್ಲೆಲ್ಲಿ ಗಮನಕ್ಕೆ ತರಬೇಕು ತಂದಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್ ಏನಾಗ್ತದೆ ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಕಾದು ನೋಡ್ತಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಬಟ್ ಏನು ಹೇಳಕ್ಕೆ ಬಯಸ್ತೀನಿ, ಈ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಯಾವುದು ಕೂಡ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರಿಗೆ ಸಂಬಂಧಪಡೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಇದು ನೈಜತೆ ಇದೆ. ಯಾವ ತನಿಖಾ ಸಂಸ್ಥೆ ಬಂದರೂ ಕೂಡ ನಾನು ಆ ಪಿಕ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರೊಡ್ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತೀನಿ. ಇದರಲ್ಲಿ ಯಾವುದೇ ಪ್ರೈವೇಟ್ ಮ್ಯಾಟ್ರ್ ಅಂತ ಬರೋಲ್ಲ. ಯಾಕಂದರೆ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಕಂಡಕ್ಟ್ ರೂಲ್ಸ್ ಅಂತ ಇರ್ತದೆ ಆಲ್ ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಸರ್ವಿಸ್ ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಿಗೆ, IAS, IPS, IFS ಅಧಿಕಾರಿಗಳಿಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ.
IAS Sinduri has responded to the allegations. She met Karnataka's Chief Secretary Vandita Sharma and alleged code of conduct violation by IPS officer Roopa. She says that nobody should be making personal insults or revealing personal pictures on social media. Her husband has also filed a police complaint against IPS Roopa.
Not the forum, this is not the platform. ಈ ಥರ ಮಾತಾಡೋದು ಸರಿಯಲ್ಲ. ಈ ಥರ ವೈಯಕ್ತಿಕ ಮಾಡೋದು ಸರಿಯಲ್ಲ. ಆಲ್ ಐ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸೇ ಇಸ್ ಗೆಟ್ ವೆಲ್ ಸೂನ್.
ಕಾನೂನು ಹೋರಾಟ ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಮೇಡಮ್? ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಇರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂದರೆ
ಪರ್ಸನಲ್ ವಿಷಯದಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಸರಿ
ಈಗ ಸರ್
ಮಾತಾಡಬೇಕು. ಈ ರೀತಿ ಕಾಲ್ ಆ್ಯಕ್ಷನ್
ಈಗ ಸರ್ ಪೊಲೀಸ್ ಸ್ಟೇಷನ್.
Let me tell you how this squabble began. On Saturday, Roopa Mudgil levelled 19 allegations against Rohini Sinduri. They ranged from corruption to misconduct. Roopa accused Sinduri of cozying up to politicians and also asked how she managed to build a swimming pool in the middle of the pandemic. IAS officer has dismissed all these charges and accused Roopa of being mentally unstable. She says there is a personal vilification campaign against her. Today, even the Karnataka government has taken a note of this spat. The Home Minister is calling this incident unfortunate. He says that Chief Minister Basavaraj Bommai will personally be looking into the entire matter. Let's take a listen.
Sir, today, sir, we are seeing that there is a tussle between two senior officers, sir, one IAS and one IPS. It's come out in a very ugly manner, sir, on social media. Now, the IPS officer, D. Roopa, sir, who has made these allegations, has urged the government to take action, sir. What action will be taken from your end?
ನೋಡಿ, ನಾನು ಕೂಡ ಮೀಡಿಯಾದಲ್ಲಿ ಗಮನಿಸಿದ್ದೀನಿ ಅವರಿಬ್ಬರು ಜಗಳನ. ಬಹಳ ದುರದೃಷ್ಟಕರವಾದಂಥ ಸಂಗತಿ. IPS, IAS ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಬಹಳ ಮೇನ್ ರೋಲ್ ಅನ್ನು ಅವರು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ, ವಹಿಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಅವರು ಸರಿಯಾಗಿರಬೇಕಾಗಿದ್ದ ಅಗತ್ಯ ಇದೆ. ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನಾವು ಇದನ್ನ ಸಹಿಸೋದಿಲ್ಲ. ಅವರು ಕಾಂಡಕ್ಟ್ ರೂಲ್ಸ್ ಪ್ರಕಾರ ಏನೇನು ಕ್ರಮ ಆಗುತ್ತೋ ಅದು ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಮುಖ್ಯಮಂತ್ರಿಗಳು ಕೂಡ ಇದನ್ನು ಬಹಳ ಗಂಭೀರವಾಗಿ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದಾರೆ.
Sir, and just one question. Also, sir, the IAS officer here, Rohini Sinduri, she has alleged that this is nothing but an attempt to malign her image, sir. So, is a meeting going to be called between both the officers, sir? This is quite a disgrace the way it's come out.
ಅದು ನಾನು ಮುಖ್ಯ ಕಾರ್ಯದರ್ಶಿಯವರಿಗೂ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ, ನಮ್ಮ CM ಅವರಿಗೂ ಮಾತಾಡಿದ್ದೀನಿ. ಅವರು ಡಿಸಿಷನ್ ತಗೊಳ್ತಾರೆ.
I'm not sure what the actual issue is, but I think this goes to show how the government is functioning when two officers are coming out in public and speaking on it. I'm not sure what the C&R rules state, but I think the Chief Secretary should intervene on this, or the CM should intervene on this. But anyway, it's a personal matter and I would not like to comment on that.
Now, this controversy raises multiple questions. A, is there any truth to the allegations against Sinduri, or is this a personal vendetta playing out in public? B, is there no concern for privacy? IAS officer or not, everyone is entitled to privacy in this country. By sharing these pictures online, there has been a clear violation of that privacy. Irrespective of whether Rohini Sinduri is guilty or not, this picture sharing trend is a dangerous one. And of course, C, what message does this send about the public discourse in our country? Imagine a young UPSC aspirant reading this news on the paper or watching this show right now. What message does it send to the BEM? The bottom line is, this controversy could end up doing irreparable damage to our country's civil servants. And let me take that question across to my colleague Neha, who is joining me live right now. Neha, you got us that chat with the Home Minister from Karnataka, and he mentions that the Chief Minister will personally be looking into this majorly embarrassing public spat between the IPS officer and an IAS officer. But what does it talk about the conduct of both these individuals? Nobody's giving anybody a clean chit over here. The mere conduct of seeing civil servants act in this manner in public life goes on to set a very bad precedent for anybody who's even aspiring to be one of them.
That's absolutely right. This is quite unbecoming of, two bureaucrats, both who are at quite a senior level over here, indulging in a war of words like this, an ugly spat that's now found its way to social media, which has, of course, gone viral. This brings back a lot of questions right now about how, when there are several issues that are plaguing the state of Karnataka right now, which need attention, which need speaking of by senior IAS and IPS officers like these, that, this is, of course, what they choose to engage in. It's really quite embarrassing also, of course, right now for the state government over here. We've seen senior leaders of the BJP, be it the Karnataka Home Minister for that matter, or Prahlad Joshi, also a senior leader again of the party here, who've gone on to condemn this act of both the officers and have in fact, said that this is something that should have been resolved, not on social media or not out there, in fact, on a public forum. With that being said, of course, while he's also gone on to say that action would be taken as per any violation of the code of conduct, we'll really have to wait it out. But really, of course, this also makes one wonder right now, with just a few months again left for the elections in the state, the people of the state too, of course, who are watching, like you rightly mentioned, this could be an aspirant of UPSC, this could be an aspirant of any other, exam for that matter, watching two senior bureaucrats, fight it out like this. We understand that both of them have taken the matter to the Chief Secretary of Karnataka in their respective capacities, while, Rohini Sinduri over here met the Chief Secretary herself and said that this was nothing but a mere attempt to malign her image. You also have Roopa there, who's written a letter again now to the Chief Secretary that's just surfaced, wherein she says that there has to be a need to expedite all the inquiries, the pending cases against her. Clearly, this happens to be, a fight between the two officers, something that was quite personal, that's now come out there after these photos were posted by the IPS officer, Roopa. We'll have to see where the government, really steps in to curb this fight from going any further.
Well, I appreciate you joining us and getting us all those details, Neha. And we shall come back to you on this developing story as to what action is the Mumbai government contemplating when it comes to the IPS versus the IAS public spat. But joining me right now are my guests, N.S. Napinai, who is an advocate of the Supreme Court of India and the founder of Cyber Sathi. And I'm also joined by Yashovardhan Azad, who is a former IPS officer. Appreciate both of you joining us here, our esteemed guest. A very good evening to both of you. My first question would definitely go to N.S. Napinai. Mr. Napinai, if the IPS officer, IAS officer, civil servants are always accorded the highest respect for that matter, and they are expected to conduct themselves in a dignified manner. Where does one draw the line when it comes to the personal life or infringement of privacy over here in this particular case, where no matter what an IPS or an IAS officer does, they're entitled to a personal life? Where is the demarcation to try and not invade into somebody's privacy, which over here we have clearly seen it being played out in public life?
Whenever we come across situations like this on public platforms, the first thing that comes to mind is social media seems to give an easy access for washing dirty linen in public. And you assume that any kind of dirty linen is permissible then. And here is where the lines are very clearly drawn. And you have rightly pointed out, Samya, that it is not going to be acceptable legally. Forget about all the other issues, but legally, it is not permissible to carry a spat so far that you start invading another person's privacy or other rights, including their right to their dignity and their reputation. So when you think that you have easy access to a media such as social media, that easy access comes with a very heavy responsibility for you as a user in general, more so when you occupy positions like this. So when you start sharing personal photographs of a person, some of the photographs you're showing seems to indicate it may have been selfies, which means it could be from the victim's device. And if it turns out that it was indeed from the victim's device, the very access to that itself could be an offense. The sharing of it could be an offense if it is in a derogatory manner of defamation. Outraging the modesty of a woman can also amount to an offense. So merely because you do not understand that there is a law spelling out specifically, or rather in this case, we have a law which spells out that violating privacy is an offense, but specifically delineates it as applicable to private parts of an individual. There is no reason for you to assume that only if you violate that, then you are committing an offense. If you're sharing general photographs, you're not committing any kind of a violation. Believe me that there are enough other provisions in law which you may be violating. So it takes a lot of care and caution when you use these kind of easily accessible platforms, and you have to exercise some logic. You know, we don't assume everybody knows the law. We don't assume everybody will know sections of the law. But you can definitely apply logic to understand what is permissible and what is impermissible conduct in public. And you are in a public place when you're in social media platforms. So take your remedies through due process. Don't start resorting to this kind of public feuds.
No, thank you so much, Napi Nahai, for putting it into perspective over here for our members on the panel and also for our viewers as to where does one draw the line when it comes to invasion of privacy. But let me also take that question across to Yashovardhan Azad, who's also joining us at this point in time. And Mr. Azad, you know, IPS officer, IAS officer can have a grouse, can have issues with each other, but to put it out in a public platform in this manner, you know, there can be an issue whether at all the particular IAS officer is using her pictures in an inappropriate manner, but an absolute third entity to this entire thing has to use the pictures to put it into public domain. Of course, the IPS and the IAS officer are entitled to their private lives and personal lives. But again, my question to be, where are you going to draw the line? What is permissible and what is not permissible in the name of adhering to the rules and the code of ethics?
As far as the code of conduct goes, this kind of a public spat is not allowed at all. I mean, you're supposed to take your grievances to the departmental channels. And that's why using somebody's photographs is wrong. But if it's a social media war between those two, and if those pictures have already been on some kind of public domain and they're being used to settle a score, well, that is their area. As the lawyer rightly said, there is no law as yet, but yes, infringement of privacy is wrong. But this is a larger issue. I mean, I don't know whether the privacy of pictures, is it something which is offensive or something like that. It is to prove a point about meeting with somebody. And similarly, there are also allegations from the other side against the other individual. Now, a thing like this in a well-administered state should not have happened at all. The Chief Secretary and the DGP could have called both the officers and could have settled the matter right there and then. But unfortunately, it seems that both seem to be larger than life and doing something which is just not allowed. I mean, both these officers must realize the responsibility. And the question is that even when a minister was asked about this, they said that this is a personal matter, but we'll see what departmental action can be taken. I mean, it's absolutely clear the head of the civil services should call both of them and ask them to settle it. Otherwise, disciplinary action can be taken against them because it's violating the code of conduct, as it is also bringing about a kind of a disrepute to the services. So I think, yes, action should be taken soon from the chief minister or the chief secretary.
Yes, absolutely, Mr. Azad. This entire matter could have been raised internally at an appropriate forum with perhaps a few seniors involved, rather than resorting to a public platform on social media, which is now, like Ms. Napinai was saying, has become almost fashionable to take all matters to social media. But having said that, how does it augur for a government where the IPS and an IAS are supposed to play a very important role to propel the state government? It doesn't really look well and paint a rosy picture for a government for that matter. Do you think that the state government must intervene? Because my colleague got that interaction with the Home Minister, Mr. Azad, and he says that the Chief Minister has now been compelled to step in and perhaps set this entire house into order.
I pity the Home Minister, who doesn't even have this much authority to rein in both these officers. And in fact, a simple matter like this could have been taken care of at their immediate departmental superiors. During our times, it was very, very clear that anything of this kind, and we had a lot of grievances. Obviously, when you have such a large number of officers, they may be having some internal differences, but they are usually sorted out, and they're not a big deal about these issues, which can be settled at the level of the chief secretary. I mean, I'm even surprised that the Home Minister wants to, skip this issue. He leaves it on the chief minister. Nobody gives a clear statement. They should have just given an order that none of them will give anything in a public domain anymore. And that would have been at it. And what has happened so far should be, a senior officer would have been appointed to inquire into it. And that would have taken care of the case. But making a tamasha out of it, I mean, it displays a very, very what you call a loose kind of an administrative setup, which is happening in Karnataka. It appears from this.
It's absolutely unfortunate to see this being played out in public domain, and the fact that we've been compelled to debate it over here at Mirror now also is because none of these sides are willing to blink first. Mr. Napinai, I will have to ask you, had this either been an IPS officer or an IAS officer been a male individual, this entire issue would have snowballed into something way bigger than what it is right now. The dignity of a woman that we often keep talking about, I know in this particular case we see a woman IPS officer is doing this to another woman IAS officer. Should there be a semblance that should be brought about as far as some sort of a camaraderie that at least women civil servants must adhere to?
Well, a couple of things. One of the interventions I wanted to make on Mr. Azad's statement is that if somebody were to put a gag order on both of them, that will be then touted as a violation of their right of free speech and expression. So this is a very dicey issue to address, So that's why I only address the legal aspects in terms of what kind of content was being shared rather than of sharing of content. So on the other hand, that's why, again, it's all about due process. To address the question that you've asked, I would say that we have to apply the same skills. When we are applying law or when we are applying any regulatory mechanism, be it in terms of service rules or be it in terms of the Information Technology Act and the rules framed under, the law should not vary because it's a male or a female. Often I keep reminding people that you should not assume that the criminal or the person committing a crime would always be a male and the victim would always be a female. You don't have to assume that. It could also be a woman who's committing a crime and the male could be a victim. So we have to remember that these gendered lens don't really apply when it comes to the mode and manner of usage of social media. It's all about when and how we think we want to start using social media as a weapon, and when we are using it as a weapon, that the victim is a soft target because she is a woman or of some other, beyond the binary gender, etc., that becomes relevant. So I would just stop on that aspect. And also I wanted to just add one more thing before we close out. It's really critical for victims to know that it's not always about running to court or to file a police complaint, etc. Under the new intermediary guidelines of 2021,
Yes.
you now have very simple remedies of takedown within 15 days. If it is not of imagery which violates 66E, if it is something that violates 66E, that is like, violating your private part, etc., then it's 24 hours. So please use these remedies also effectively.
Well, I appreciate you joining us here, NS Napinai and Mr. Yashovardhan Azad, for a very insightful conversation over here at Mirror Now. Thank you so much for your time. And with that, we are slipping into a short break right now. Lots more lined up. Stay tuned and keep watching Mirror Now.